I am really privileged. I'm honored to be here tonight in this magnificent institution, which has meant so much to the development of freedom in our republic. Some of you might not know that at the time that in the last decade, I also had an opportunity to pastor Providence Presbyterian Church in Louisa County. Back in the days when Anglicanism reigned supreme, when the idea of Protestantism was thought to be a subversive influence, and yet the power of the Great Awakening was beginning to find itself stirring the souls of many, many people in the hinterlands of Virginia. Samuel Davies was sent by the New Side group of Presbyterians as a missionary to Virginia from Pennsylvania, and was given permission by Governor Gooch to establish 5 meeting houses in Hanover County to try to bring some kind of order to the emerging enthusiasm. Patrick Henry's grandfather, Patrick Henry's namesake, Patrick railed against this terrible, terrible, pernicious influence, but Patrick Henry's mother participated in it. And so Patrick Henry connected everlastingly to this amazing institution. Actually probably had some of his speaking ability enhanced by his exposure to Samuel Davies and those Presbyterian subversives out in Louisa County. By the way, if you want to go out and see the church, it's the last of the Davies meeting houses that remain. You go out 64, get off in the village of Gum Springs, wind away down Fine Three Chalk Road, and there it sits. In those days, the Protestants couldn't build a church that looked like a church. They couldn't have a steeple on it. It had to be 5 miles away from any established Anglican church. So they would go out in the woods and build a tobacco barn and worship in it. And there it sits, built in 1747, and sits there remaining. It has had worship in it every single year since 1747. A remarkable accomplishment, not quite, of course, to equal this wonderful institution, but pretty amazing for us Presbyterians, Johnny-come-latelys that we are. The late Dan Borstein, who was a very good historian and librarian of Congress, said that trying to plan for the future without a sense of the past, get this image, is like trying to plant cut flowers. We're raising a lot of cut flowers and trying to plant them these days. I'm a public historian. My calling in life is to make academic history accessible to people who have neither the time nor the inclination to inquire why people fly planes into buildings or walk into a Tel Aviv coffee shop and blow it and themselves to smithereens. Over the last few years, teachers, parents, legislators, politicians, educated administrators, and average citizens have been concerned that our society is losing its ties with the past. These days, a teacher holds his or her breath when they begin to explore people's historical knowledge. The students look blank when you mention important figures who are not rock stars. Lee Harvey Oswald. Wasn't he the drummer for the Doors? Pizarro. Isn't that fast food Italian restaurant down the mall? Taj Mahal? Forward for the Lakers, right? Bill Lederer teaches at St. Paul's School and has made a hobby of collecting written evidence of students' ignorance on historical matters. One of my students was surfing the internet the other day and came up with a list that Lederer had compiled of statements or sentences that students have written in essays on historical topics. These are real statements from real students in college and high school. The government of England was a limited mockery. found walking difficult because he had an abyss on his knee. Queen Elizabeth was the Virgin Mother. And when she exposed herself before her troops, they all shouted, "Hurrah!" And then her navy went out and defeated the Spanish armadillo. John Milton was a great author. He wrote Paradise Lost. And then his wife died, and he wrote Paradise Regained. But my favorite of all the ones that I've read over the years, Sir Francis Drake circumcised the world with a 100-foot clipper, which was very dangerous to his men. Several years ago, as people began to anticipate the 150th anniversary of the Civil War, public historians like myself began to dream that we could accomplish a couple of things. First, we could get people excited about the story of the past. I guess that animates my life and has, at least for the last 17 or 18 years. Second, we could correct a very serious historical error in the telling of the national myth in the story of the founding of America. Our desire was not to put aside or to denigrate other regions or states or myths, but rather to restore to their appropriate places Jamestown and Virginia as the first and preeminent models in the development of the United States. Now, Europeans were not the first humans to inhabit North America, and the English were not the first Europeans. There were Vikings, possibly Basque fishermen from northern Spain, the colonial Spanish and Portuguese, a few Englishmen in the lost colony, perhaps even some Chinese, although there is scant evidence to support such a claim. And of course, of most ancient tenure, Native Americans had been here for a long time. They had visited, hunted, fished, mined, pillaged, cultivated, or settled North, Central, and South America for centuries. Long before the three little ships of Christopher Newport's Armada dropped their human cargo on that misty peninsula in the Powhatan Estuary in 1607, life existed here in the New World. In many ways, the English were almost too late. One of the reasons why they were too late was a colossal error on the part of King Henry VII of England in the early 1490s. Henry's government was approached by a certain Italian sailor by the name of Christopher Columbus, who had been making the rounds of the royal houses of Europe, trying to raise money to realize a silly idea. He thought that if you could put boats in the water and sail them west across the unknown seas of the Atlantic, you would discover Japan. To his dying day, Christopher Columbus still believed that he had discovered the eastern coast of Asia. Instead, as we know, he had discovered a whole new hemisphere. When word of the successful voyage of Columbus, financed by the royal house of Spain, reached England, you can only imagine how chagrined the English king must have felt. So later in the decade, when he was approached by another Italian explorer, Giovanni Caboto, or as we know him, John Cabot, Henry determined not to make the same mistake again. He financed Cabot's voyages that became the basis of the vast English claims in North America. Yet for over a century, England dithered and dithered and dithered while Spain got richer and richer and richer and almost succeeded in its invasion of England with the Spanish Armadillo, the Spanish Armada, in 1588. Attempts in the late 1500s to settle Roanoke Island off the coast of North Carolina failed. However, circumstances led England to reaffirm its vast claim in North America, named for Elizabeth, the Virgin Queen, and in 1607 finally got a permanent toehold in the New World.